What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, Eugene and I are going to talk to you about some ways that you can drill without actually drilling, at least drilling in the way that you think about it. We'll give you some tips on how you can make your techniques more effective, some ways that I've done it, and this thing is actually inspired by a one of my jiu-jitsu heroes, who I'll talk about in the podcast. So you can listen to that and see one of the people that I've been fortunate enough to train with, and some of the people that I follow. So we'll jump into the podcast here in a second. Before we do, we'll thank our sponsors. We've got Charlotte's Web CBD. Again, this is a CBD sponsor that we bring onto the show, and it's the one that I use. You know, we actually, Eugene and I were just talking about some stuff related to posting up about CBD or posting up about Charlotte's Web. And for me, like I just got off the phone earlier today with the supplement company whose protein and supplements that I use, because I wanted to put together something for the people that follow me. And the reason being is because, again, just like the CBD that I use, the protein I use, it's like I like offering things to people that like I actually use and I get a lot of value from. It's like I got a message today from someone who was like, it was like some random company. They were like, hey, we listen to your podcasts and videos, whatever. Would you like to sell? It was some random ridiculous thing, and I was like, no, I don't want to offer that to anyone. And they're like, and just for you guys listening, they were offering it was like $500. So you would give me $500 to like do a plug, put it on a video somewhere, and do an Instagram post. It was like one time I make a post about all of it, and I get $500, which sounds like a good deal. But to me, I'm like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I was like, I don't want to sell anything that I'm not really excited about, because I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but like I don't like being screwed over. And so I wouldn't want to do the same for anyone else. So with that said, I really like Charlotte's Web's products. Again, I've been using them for a couple of years now, and I really enjoyed the quality of it. I enjoy the variety of stuff that they had. I've used everything from their balms that they have for recovery, which actually have been really good. Like the I forgot what that thing's called, but that little squirt bottle that you gave me, that one, I love that one. It doesn't have the same amount of camphor or whatever it is that like the icy hot style stuff. But man, like it felt great after some hard lifting sessions and stuff. Would rub it on after a shower. And then again, you guys know that I'm a big fan of the gummies. And then recently, I'm still going through it. I've got the Orange Blossom tincture. So again, they've got a ton of good stuff. If you want to check out some of their stuff, it's fantastic for increasing the sort of quality of sleep, sort of overall levels of calmness. You can check out their website, charlottesweb.com. Look for the promo, or use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on the order on whatever you get. And were you gonna say something?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So they've got the gummies are awesome, but they think they're gonna have some. They're starting to the quantities, or they might run out. Oh. So they have right now they come in like a 60, I believe. But you can get 2 30s for the same price. But they also have a cool one where you can get 3 of the 30, like through all the different types of gummies.
Okay.
So you get like a sample pack. It's the same price. So it's kind of cool. So you can get like the Calm,
so you get like the
recovery.
So get 90.
You'll get 90, but you'll get one of each, and you get to try them all out, which is kind of cool. And then they also now are carrying, it's called CBD Medic, and so they actually have they have like these balms and creams that are like they're actually approved by FDA for like joint pain and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're on Charlotte's Web website. You get the same discount.
That was the one.
They're like, and I told them like they're like legit, like super strong.
Again, charlottesweb.com, promo code Jiu-Jitsu. And then we've got Epic Roll. I'm looking at, so Matt was kind enough, so your guys are going to see me rolling in this sucker soon in one of the rolling videos, but he sent me so they made what did they call this thing again?
It's like the Urban Legend.
The Urban Legend rash guard. So we got the Urban Legend Urban Legend rash guard, and I've never actually looked at it this close. So we've got, it's like a conspiracy.
It's so
theory
awesome,
dream.
by the way.
We've got Loch Ness. We've got
UFOs.
We've got like signs for Apple Worship Center, Microsoft Foods, Bilderberg meetings, COVID vaccines. We got chemtrails, 5G. We've got Tupac's grave with Sasquatch in a mask. We've got UFOs. I mean, it's a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah, the mask. I like the Sasquatch with the mask.
Yeah, right. So we've got the abominable snowman burying treasure. I mean, we got all kinds of crazy stuff. So again, I'm excited to wear it. So I'm going to check it out. You guys will see it coming up soon. But if you guys want to check out some of Matt's stuff, these interesting designs that he has, these are kind of always something he has going on. So you can check out his stuff at epicrollbjj.com. Use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu. Again, save 15% on the order. And again, on anything you're interested in. And if you guys are interested in supporting the podcast for less than I say this every time. You guys know what it is. Basically, for next to nothing, if you guys want to support the podcast, get some extra content, you can join into the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Inside, you'll get conversations with us, other black belts, and other guests that we've had on the podcast about different things that we think would be useful for people as far as their own progress and their own training. We just uploaded some videos of me rolling with Chad. There's a seminar. There's literally one of my, hell, you could do it this way. I had a seminar that I charged $70 for, and it's uploaded in its entirety on the podcast, or on the Patreon podcast. You can go in there, you could just get that, watch that, and boom, you made your money back.
Yep.
Because it's.
I like the narrate. We put up some narrated rolls, which I love from a couple of your tournaments, and some of it is just you rolling, and some of it's from a tournament, which is really interesting. Kind of because you break down like a lot of the stuff that you teach. Kind of, it's a live scenario breakdown, which is super useful.
Yeah. For some of you guys that either if you're in my, if you've got any of my products, like my series that I offer, or even like if you're in the Vault membership, like you see these moves that I show, and then in some of these narrations that I do, you'll see them being used. And so I think that's always valuable to be able to see it being used and actually hear me talk about it. But again, if you guys want to check that out, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Guys, with that said, let's jump into the podcast. What's up, guys? So today I wanted to start the podcast off with a little lesson from one of my jiu-jitsu heroes that we're probably going to have on the podcast soon, Bernardo Faria. So Bernardo, just to sort of give you some background before I jump into it, Bernardo back in the day, like when I was a brown belt, like a high-level brown belt, and I was actually teaching at the gym full-time, he was coming onto the scene, and he was a heavyweight who was out there like sweeping people with half guard in a way that just really hadn't been done. You didn't see a lot of heavyweights just pull guard like that and go after it, and it was really impressive. And one of the first big seminars that we did back in the gym back in 2016 was bring Bernardo out. He was one of the first people that I wanted to bring out. And so I was listening to him talk on an interview recently, and there were some things I took away from it that I thought maybe would be useful to you guys. And we're really going to hammer down on one particular idea, because this is something where so many people do it differently, and people, again, this is the nature of people, and again, you as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, you as an intelligent human being, have to make sure that you fight against this, because this is what most people want. Most people want simple answers to complex situations and complex problems, right? People just want sort of an out-of-the-box, step-by-step, paint in the line, by the numbers kind of solution. And again, if you're intelligent, you understand that those rarely exist, that you take and you pull from other people's experience, and then you sort of get some of your own, and you sort of make it up as you go. And this will kind of encompass that as well. So to get into it, drilling is something in jiu-jitsu that we know is good, right? We know it's helpful, and so many people talk about it. But then there's other people that say it's no good, that you don't need to drill anything, it's dumb, it's a waste of time, whatever. And there's everything in between. And Bernardo, in the interview, he was talking about the fact that when he was at the high level world champion status, where he was like knocking out titles and doing all this stuff, he was constantly playing around, kind of taking sort of a scientific approach to his training. And I mean this basically just, constantly questioning whether he's doing the right thing, and then testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and seeing how he feels. But he said he was basically taking this sort of approach to training. And he tried multiple different things, because he said he would look around at Marcelo Garcia, who was basically just doing all jiu-jitsu. He would look at guys like, I think he said Lucas Lepre, who was basically drilling a lot. And then there were other guys that were lifting weights, and there was guys doing wrestling. And so he would do jiu-jitsu, pure jiu-jitsu. He would do jiu-jitsu and just lots of drilling. He would do jiu-jitsu and wrestling, jiu-jitsu and weightlifting, jiu-jitsu and this, jiu-jitsu and that, and basically figuring out what works best for him. And of course, his sort of measurement, if you will, was how did he perform? How did he feel? He would say, well, I felt great and I performed well, then this is the best one. And I thought it was interesting because he was talking about drilling. And again, drilling it's a big subject, and it's something that a lot of people are into. I mean, I like drilling. I especially like drilling, and also talk about how I do it, which is maybe not the same, but you can take it for your own training. But he said that when he was drilling, he says that he didn't really feel like he got some crazy effect from it. He said, man, I was drilling a lot, but really I didn't really feel like I was getting a lot from it. And he said that what he sort of tended to fall towards or sort of get a lot from was, instead of focusing a lot on drilling, he would roll, or he would learn a technique, do some of the technique work in class and all that stuff like we normally do. And then when he was rolling, he was constantly trying to hit that technique. And when he was training, he said he would focus on a technique and just constantly try to hit it. And on the interview that he was doing, he was talking. The other interviewer was talking about the fact that they rolled together once, right, or a bunch of times together. But like the first time they rolled, Bernardo hit him with the same technique like 7 times during the roll. And so again, that's a really good idea. And if you guys are, and I'm kind of going off, if you guys are in my, if you guys are a part of the Jiu-Jitsu Vault, which is like my membership, my monthly membership that I have, then you guys got this in the sort of the choose letter that I call it, like the monthly written part that I put out. But basically, Bernardo was talking about that, like where, he would just step on the mats and have this game that he was focused on, and his game is relatively small. And he would just, the way he would drill it was basically just pick those techniques and just do them over and over and over again. And he said that's where he got the best benefit. And again, if you guys, if you're on my email newsletter, if you're not, you should be. But I give away a free ebook, which is about drilling and jiu-jitsu. And sort of, if you read through that, this kind of idea is what I personally consider my own sort of jiu-jitsu training philosophy, is what I consider active drilling. So there's like passive drilling where you're just repping techniques out over and over again. But as the spectrum kind of moves towards effectiveness, one of the things that I think is really useful is to get to a point of active drilling, which is basically where you're doing a technique against someone that's resisting. I'm still drilling a technique, I'm still doing it, but I'm doing it against an active person. And in wrestling, for instance, like when we would drill, drilling didn't mean that we were just doing it passively. We might do drills where one person's trying to escape and one person's trying to hold them down. And that would be an actual drill, but we're going full speed. But it was a drill. Drill doesn't mean that you have to just do it like with nothing, right? And so, that idea of having active drilling as a part of your training is really useful. And I'll agree with that. Like, I think it's one of the more, especially once you're at a certain level, it's really hard to do this in the beginning. Like if you're a brand new white belt, it's hard to drill like this because of the fact that you don't have a skill buffer. But the better and better you get at jiu-jitsu, you have this buffer of skill where you're far better than the people sometimes that you're rolling with. And when you're with those people, that is a great opportunity to do the techniques that you're trying to work on over and over and over again. And then again, if you read that newsletter that I sent out in the vault, the second thing that I would mention from it is that his game is small. Like Bernardo said that he didn't have a ton of techniques. He would talk, he just said he would have a handful of techniques that he'd use. I remember Roger Gracie was doing an interview a while ago, or he was actually doing a talk at a gym, and in the talk, he said that he can count on 2 hands how many techniques he's mastered. Right, 2 hands, and he's probably got a couple fingers left. So one of the best dudes in the world, like Roger Gracie, is by far one of the legends. Bernardo Faria is the same way, one of the legends of jiu-jitsu. They have a small game. And then yet people think that they need to somehow have this massive game to be good, right? Again, you're going to know a lot, and even Roger said this in the video. He's like, I know a lot of moves. I know a ton of stuff. But my best stuff, when push comes to shove, it's these handful of techniques. And so for you, again, it's the same thing. And so you're going to have a handful of techniques, and one of the best ways to make those techniques sharper is to focus on them during rolling. And again, you can kind of get a form of active drilling where instead of stepping on the mat and having no focus, you focus on just hitting that one technique over and over and over again. And again, I thought that was a useful training tip from Bernardo, and I figured it would be useful for you guys because I know right now some people are coming back from the lockdown, some people are still in the lockdown, and everybody's training is a little bit more limited than it used to be. And so with that, you don't necessarily have a ton of time to drill, a ton of training partners. So having a focus when you step on the mat is really important. So being able to focus in on whatever it is that you're doing and focus in on that particular technique or whatever it is that you're trying to use would be a good idea. So if you don't have drilling partners, or if you don't have the time to drill, just rolling with people and going for the same techniques over and over and over again can be a really valuable way of training, because you're going to sharpen those weapons up. And again, it has a lot of the same benefits of drilling, where you just get that muscle memory. And in fact, I think that's it's kind of a more effective way to do it. And lastly, I'll sort of throw in my own experience with it. That's what I had to do a lot of. Right? For me, for instance, during a time period where I was a black belt and really I only had blue belts to train with, I had to work on my game plan, work on my techniques over and over and over again, because my skill was much better. And so I would purposely do things, purposely go for techniques, purposely create scrambles, purposely put myself in bad situations that I needed to get better at, whatever it might be. And then, especially when techniques get closer or competitions, get closer, that's when I'll like start to drill more. So for instance, like 2 weeks before competition, that's where I'll start to probably my training, actual hard training is going to like drop. Like I'm not going to train all that hard, and my drilling is going to go way up, and basically just get that muscle memory, because this way when I step on the mat, I'm not thinking, I'm just going off of muscle memory. And then during that time period where I'm drilling more and rolling less, my body's going to be more recovered. So when the competition comes, I'm going to be ready to go. Like one of the guys right now is getting ready to do a competition in Alabama. And he always fights me on this. I'm like, I told him last night, because he's competing on Friday.
So it's the PGF, right?
Yeah, PGF, Brandon McGaffron's
and that's
professional
every
travel
week?
league. Every week for 7 weeks. 7 more weeks.
7 more weeks,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
And so I told him, I said, look, he's competing on Friday. I was like, listen, just don't roll Wednesday and Thursday. Drill, but don't roll. And he has such a hard time doing it because he just likes training. But I'm like, I promise you, by Friday, you're going to be recovered, you're going to be rested, and you're going to be ready to go. You're going to be wanting to be out there rolling. You're going to be wanting to compete. You're going to be wanting to do that. Whereas if you train your tail off all week long, then by the time it comes, you're going to be like, I'm so tired. You know, and so again, just an idea for you guys. So if you're trying to get some drilling in, drilling doesn't have to be just simply repetition after repetition after repetition. It can also be rolling with situational style rolling. It can be rolling where you just have a goal that you're after. You're still going to be focused in on it. And then again, that's why that little ebook that I give away when people sign up for my newsletter, I call it Focus Jiu-Jitsu, because really that's what it's about, right? If you're trying to make your jiu-jitsu better, it's important to have a focus from time to time. You don't have to do it all the time, because again, like one of the things that I dislike about competitions is my game becomes very boring. The way that I roll becomes boring. There's not a lot of play anymore, because I'm focused on a particular game plan.
You're not experimenting, so
Right.
to speak, pretty much.
Yeah, but whenever I'm not trained, like whenever I'm not really focused on something in particular, it's a lot more play, which is fun. But there's a time where if you want to get better, you've got to focus in on something. And like Bernardo was saying, you know, having a goal in mind and stepping on the mat and just simply trying to work those techniques is really, really valuable. And I think it'd be useful to you guys. And so I wanted to bring it up with you guys. I put it in the vault this month, and I figured it'd be worth talking about in the podcast.
So from what kind of, in my experience training, I think there's kind of a sliding scale to it, so to speak. Like I think when you're a younger or like you're starting out early in your jiu-jitsu training, drilling is probably more of something you should do, more controlled environment, just trying to get your, like you said, muscle memory, get your movements down. And then as you get a little bit more experience, I think you go from that higher drilling to more active drilling or more active, rolling type stuff.
Maybe.
That's kind of what
maybe it
makes
depends.
sense to me, I think.
But it depends, because like he was saying, Lucas Lepre and those guys were drilling all the time.
Right.
So again, it's and this is another thing, and this is why I go back to that idea that I shared in the beginning. Like, you never want to buy into someone's ideas wholesale, like 100%. Even me, like if you like listening to the podcast, if you like my videos, I'm glad you do. But I'm not putting them out here so that you follow them blindly. I want you to take this information and then mix it up and match it up with your experience, and you sort of create your own style of it, your own stew of that information. I'm just simply trying to add from experience and from the things that I see. And Bernardo was the same way. He's like, look, I tried all this stuff out. It's working for these guys. It didn't work for me. I felt better doing this. And he said that it was jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and some weight training. That's what he said he felt best with.
So if somebody's looking to maybe figure out what their recipe is for drilling versus rolling versus active drilling, whatever you want to call it, how long do you think they should give themselves? Like 2 months, a month, like of consistent training, like try one way, then maybe try another way and just see. And what's the litmus test? Is it competition? Is it like how many times you get the position or the submission or whatever? Like, what do you think would be enough time for somebody to provide to see if they can get a good idea on success rates?
I mean, honestly, it depends. I've noticed that usually around 500 to 1,000 repetitions of a particular technique, if the person already has a foundation set. If the person's like, if they're brand new, then it's tough. But if the person has like a decent foundation, like a pretty good blue belt, purple belt, you give them 500 to 1,000 repetitions. If they're not feeling that movement right out, like by then something's off. I remember I used to do a private lesson with a guy where I would literally count his repetitions and I would put it in a book. And I was like, all right, tell me when the move starts working for you. Because I was curious. I was like,
sure.
when does it start working? And I had a few guys that I did privates with that with. So they would come in and they would just rep. I was their drilling dummy. They would just bam, 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 break out reps. And I found that it was around like 750 boom, they're just killing, just hitting reps. And I remember Justin before competitions, one of the guys at the gym, he's brown belt now. Justin went to he was drilling this one arm bar, I mean, like thousands of times. And he went to competitions and was just killing everybody with it. I mean, he went to one tournament and submitted like all of his opponents with that same arm bar, same setup, same everything, right? It's just so much faster. And so again, but in the gym they were already doing it. You know, and to me it's like the litmus test is it starts in the gym. That's your lab, right? So how do you test your lab experiment? Well, does it work in the lab? If it does, well, great. Let's try to replicate that out in the real world, right? Okay. So then you say, okay, well, good. It's working in the gym. Let's see if it works elsewhere. And again, you know, it's different for every position. It's different for every person. If you already have a foundation set in that position, it's much easier. So for instance, if you already got a good back mount, it doesn't take much to like then add a move in.
Gotcha. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like for me, like I had a good back mount, and I started playing with some different moves last year, and I mean it didn't take much to put them in. Whereas if I was going to say, all right, I've got to implement some reverse De La Hiva, it's not one of my favorite positions, so that would be pretty tricky. You know, that would take me a couple months to like to kind of get something going, and then it would probably take me like to really add in a really new position to your game. That's usually, to me, like if you're going to really work, at least a year investment. Gotcha. You know, because you got to think long term. It'll start working before then, but before it's like tight. To me, it's like a year.
Yeah, the interesting thing you mentioned about competition prep, like some people would think that they should already, when it gets closer to competition, they should already, maybe drilling goes down and rolling goes up just to get their timing in, their cardio, get that kind of competition feel. But you're thinking, and this is different for everyone. This doesn't have to be one way fits all. Like your way is like you do the rolling kind of a little earlier on in the competition prep, and then you're just getting more reps of drilling closer. I understand what you're saying as far as from a safety perspective.
No, you may not be. Okay. I don't know. So check it out. So in the beginning, I do lots of rolling. It's volume.
Okay.
So like this isn't a perfect world, because a lot of times I just pick out tournaments and I just do them. But if I was getting ready for something big, it would start off with lots of volume, right? Okay. I'm going to train lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of rounds. I'm going to do it, and I'm not necessarily so much worried about intensity yet. Just volume, just trying to get that like whatever, and I'm going to increase cardio and everything else. I'm trying to get this engine up.
Okay.
As things get closer, I cut the volume down, but the intensity goes up.
Okay,
so
cool.
For instance, during those, I don't decrease intensity 2 weeks out. The intensity goes up. I'm just going to roll less. So for instance, when I'm rolling, it's like a game 100%. If you're rolling with me, it's not going to be fun, right? Like a lot of times, like when we roll, I'm just screwing around. I'm just having fun. I'm just trying stuff out, whatever. You know, sometimes you can see that the intensity is there, sometimes it's not. But if it's getting ready for a competition, if I'm 2 weeks out, if we're rolling, you're getting me at a you're going to get me in shape. You're going to get me where I'm coming after you. I'm going for submissions. I'm coming at you. There's not a lot of play, right? And so the intensity is going to go up. I'm just not going to roll as much because the engine is there. I'm already pumped up. I'm good. The volume has been done. Now it's just time to keep that intensity up, because that's where I want to make sure that the, like I said, the timing's there, and basically timing it with that intensity. And then with the drilling, then I do more drilling because I want to continue to sharpen those moves a little bit up beforehand. But the intensity goes up before the tournament. I roll less because, again, the risk of injury is there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get myself injured if I'm rolling that intense. And if you try to roll super, super intense every single day, it's going to be bad.
Sure.
Because you're going to get yourself injured. But if you roll intense, like maybe say 2 to 3 days a week, you got plenty of time to rest. You're still touching that intensity. You're still keeping yourself in shape. And if you do other stuff along with it, you'll be fine. At least for me. But as like I said, I didn't want it to sound like I wasn't rolling as much. It's like I'm rolling and I'm getting tough. I'm going after it. I'm just not rolling as much volume, so to speak. And this is very similar to if you look at, like, say, even people getting into powerlifting. Right, you do a lot of volume and all this work and stuff like that, and as the competition gets closer, you start to drop some of that down, but you still keep the intensity high. You just do a little bit less volume, so you can keep that. Again, this is one method of doing it, you know, but you can keep that going.
So like John Donner talked about like drilling and stuff, and what kind of training partners you should have. So maybe if you're developing a move, I mean, you're a black belt, so like most people are going to be appropriate for you, but maybe you're like a blue or a purple.
Sure.
What do you recommend? Maybe, you know, who would you pick to roll with or start to do some of that active drilling with?
So let's say that it's we've got a perfect world, and there's this weird scenario where the belts, like, everybody rolls evenly at their belt.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically white belts nullify white belts, blue belts nullify blue belts, but they're better than white belts and so forth.
Sure.
So let's say we got a purple belt, middle of the road purple belt. If they roll with black belts, they're getting creamed. If they roll with brown belts, they're hanging, still getting beat, but they're hanging.
Right.
Purple belts, they kind of just go tit for tat. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. If they go with a blue belt, they're an advantage. They're tough, but they win. And if they go with white belts, it's just like walk in the park. To me, you should have multiple styles of games, right? Like, because to me, it's like, think of yourself as like a military. The military is constantly developing new weapons, right? They're not like, hey, man, we got this great jet that we made in 1970, and that's all we're running with, right? Like, we don't need to do it, right? It's you know, we're not using World War II era tanks like North Korea. You know, we got new stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna slip that in there. But anyway, but
Chewy's always going to slip in a little history tip.
I'm sure someone's going to be like, that's not correct, Chewy. That's okay. But the
redact it.
I'm not redacting anything. This is a podcast. We say what we want to say.
Say what we want to say.
Anyway, get off topic. Anyway, going back to purple belt. So
yes,
to me, like this is even the way that I like would operate even today. Like, you start by using those. If you let's say if you got into something new that you want to drill, you start off by using on the white belts, right? It's a benefit to them. It's a benefit to you. You're not using your best game. They get a chance to play a little bit more. You get to develop a new weapon. To me, like when I roll with a white belt, if I just do my A game, it's incredibly boring.
Right.
Because it just works too well. It's like, oh, this isn't even fun, right? So with them, I'll play around with new moves I'm trying out. So I'll be like, I'll purposely try to do stuff. Like if I'm working an escape, I'll let them pass my guard. I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to like fight and they'll pass and then I'll escape and do it again. You know, get those reps in. Like there's been times where I've been working on escape and I'm with a young white belt or blue belt. I'll literally let them pass and then I'll escape and do it again. And by the end, I've gotten like 10 to 12 active repetitions of a move. And what's cool is because then they start to defend the move and I have to figure out new ways to make that move work, right? Which then that creates a system. I know that like everybody's kind of got a hard on for the word system when it relates to jiu-jitsu, but true. That's what it is. Like, you know, it's like, by the way, this changes from time to time. I'm a student of marketing, so I look at all this stuff and it's like a couple years ago it was blueprint, now it's system, right? It was formula, it was blueprint. It's okay, whatever. Call it in whatever you want to. It's the same stuff. Basically, every one of us that trains, if we use a technique over and over and over again, we start to develop if this, then that. So if this doesn't work, you know, A doesn't work, then we go to B, then we go to C, then we go to D. Like your loop choke. You have all kinds of setups and stuff off your loop choke. It wasn't like you were consciously sitting in a room with a chalkboard going, oh, this is what I'm going to do. You tested it out so many times, and people typically tend to have similar reactions and defenses to something, you know, and then because they're governed by the principles in jiu-jitsu, and then you start to make adjustments on that. Simple, very simple. And so, you know, and so when you do that, as you start to use these techniques over and over again, people start to get wise to them, they defend them, and then you're creating the system. Now, meanwhile, once that technique is starting to get to some proficiency, that's when you bring it up to the level of same skill as yourself. So when you roll with someone that's like tit for tat, that's when you start trying it against them. And you just slowly progress it. Now, when you go against like someone that's higher than you, that's going to kill you, you just do what you can. You just do whatever the hell you can get done. You know, like when I went, when I was rolling against JT, you know, I'm surviving. I'm just like, you know, I got like, you know, maybe a sweep or something at some point, right? I knocked him off balance.
That was so fun to watch.
I knocked him off balance a little bit.
I never see that, like, honestly, when you're training, like, I don't really see struggle much.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think, I thought you guys were just we all were kind of moving, but I didn't even think you were really struggling. It was just like, he was just like
sweat dripping,
just like a wet blanket on top of you.
Well, he did it great because, like, you know, obviously I'm bigger than him.
Sure.
Right. But I mean, he played it perfectly. His way that he positioned his body. That's actually one of the things I'm going to be breaking down in the vault for next month is like, because I have the video and I've been watching it, like looking at the way he does it.
Yeah.
And it's like the way that he puts me off balance, like basically killed my half guard, killed my butterfly guard. I asked him at that seminar the next day. I was like, dude, how are you? Like, you know, what was this the right thing to do? And he was like, yeah, you just stopped doing it. You know, basically, I was doing the right thing to defend it, but then I just stopped. You know, I was like, oh, okay.
It almost to me, like, now I'm not a surfer by any means. It was like he was like surfing on top of you, kind of. Yeah. He was just kind of like anticipating your movement and just getting his weight shifted just a little bit. Like, right, I think he was expecting reactions,
right,
and you do that too. You like a lot of times you're like. You're baiting someone. Oh, you're going to do this to defend? I'm going to get you. Like me and Patrick Bliss roll. If we're getting tangled in our legs, it's like, he's setting me up. Like I'll be defending, and as soon as I defend, he's already ready for the next thing and the next thing. So I think that's where the next levels come into the jiu-jitsu.
Well, and why does that happen? Because he's played that position so much. Like, so basically the position is where he puts me in an angle where my half guard and butterfly guard are off center. Like, I'm not where I need to be.
Right.
And then I'm having to fight against it. And then so he's been at that position so many times, so that like whenever I move, it's his body intuitively does it. Like, there's a I was talking to the guys about this morning at the gym when we were teaching class. I'll bring up the little picture and I'll read it off to you. But basically in jiu-jitsu, you're going through this, and I'm sure you guys have heard this. There's like that little triangle here, where basically you start off as a white belt, and early on as a novice, you're unconscious. It's unconscious incompetence. You are unaware that you have no clue what you're doing, right? Then it turns into conscious incompetence, which just means you're aware that you don't know what you're doing, right? Like, that's the next stage, right? Where you're, okay, I'm aware now, right? That happens very quickly, and you stay there for a while. Then there's conscious competence, which means that you understand things and you're doing the right thing, but you have to think about it. It requires a lot of effort to do the right thing. What you're aiming for ultimately is unconscious competence, meaning it's intuition, it's instinct, it's wired into your nervous system. Like, I shared the story about last year when I was working on my back mount pretty heavily. I was doing all these different techniques, and again, using the method that I'm talking to you about right now, where I just would learn the technique, I would practice a few times, and I would just use it over and over again in drilling. Well, when I was practicing these techniques, I did them so many times that I remember, like, Jess and I, we were laying there spooning next to each other. So, like, I'm laying around next to her, her head's in my arms, and we're just snuggling up. Going
Are you Little Spoon, by the way?
Every now and then,
I'm kidding.
every now and then she'll spoon me. Like, we'll wake up and I call her my rocket pack.
Your rocket pack.
Yeah. But we were laying there, and then, like, she said that I started going to sleep. And, like, I don't know if you guys ever had the thing where your body twitches a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I was twitching, but when I was twitching, I was cupping her wrist, like, because basically I'll fight for wrist control in the back. So I was cupping her wrist, and then my other hand, which was, she's laying with her head and neck in my bicep, I started, like, choking, like, a little bit. Like, I started going for chokes, and she said it kind of freaked her out a little bit, because she was, like, half asleep, and all of a sudden I'm, like, down here, like, getting her in, like, a choke. Luckily, she knows how to do jiu-jitsu, so she defended it. She, like, grabbed the arm, got her head out of there, and she got away from me.
There you go.
She's like, get away from this guy. He can sleep on the couch tomorrow. But basically, what I was getting at to the students, I was like, look, because we've been doing the same couple back takes over and over and over again, I was like, I want you to do these without thinking about them. When the opportunity comes, I just want it to be, like, automatic. And that's what you're going for. And so this is why it's important to do things a lot, to do techniques over and over and over again, to not just move to the next thing. It's about doing stuff over and over and over again, because then it pushes it from that unaware sort of point to all of a sudden it's wired into automaticity, where your nervous system, you've taken that motor pattern and pushed it into your nervous system, into your muscular system, where they do it without you having to think about it. And that's like that. That's the next level. Like, when you get to that point, that's next level jiu-jitsu. A lot of people think it's like somehow I'm thinking, like, because they'll think, oh, jiu-jitsu is like chess. Well, it's like kind of, maybe, but really it's like you've got intuition. So, like, where someone is fighting for hand grips and stuff like that, and they're having to consciously think about all that, I do all that on autopilot. My body, like, it's basically like doing all kinds of stuff on autopilot, and now I'm thinking at a higher level.
Yeah.
And it's only if I roll with someone like JT, where then it brings me back to where I'm fighting, I'm going back to that base level, so he's above me, because he's at a higher level of his intuition, and his instinct is much better than mine. So it's like I'm fighting just to hang with his movement. That's automatic, right? And so that's where it kind of changes.
Yeah, it almost looks like, say you have the back, it's continuous. It's not like you're almost like continuously, like, fighting the hands. You're never really stopped at, like, a point. I mean, sometimes maybe to reposition and get control, but, like, when you were in JT rolling, there wasn't really a lot of stopping on his end. He was kind of just constantly just floating and moving. I mean, again, you have that, which speeds up your timing. Your timing gets better when it's automatic like that. It's just it's really a lot about timing, and I think that a big thing is you account for a lot more variables, like, meaning, like, if their hand's in a weird position, you're going to be able to account for that a lot more quickly, which is a lot of kind of what some of the research talks about, muscle memory, quote unquote, if that's a real thing or not. I think some of it, a course I took, they were talking about just your ability to account for variability in the environment is better. And so you can account for, like, the environment not being optimal. Yeah. Like, say the hand is not exactly where it needs to be. It's a little bit further away, but you're able to get a position where you need it or control it how you need it. So that's kind of, I mean, that's where I think. And then when you're adding, like, so I think when you're drilling, it's like this really controlled environment. Like this person is perfectly in this position every single time, and so you're doing things in a way that's not going to require a lot of variability, a lot of, you're not going to have to reach for an arm or, get an underhook from a weird angle. Then you start adding, you're kind of adding the variables to it, the difficulty, the stuff that can go wrong increases,
well, then
so to speak.
Then you add in play.
Yes.
Right, because to me, this is where it comes into. Like when you think about the way the sort of default way that humans learn, we don't learn in schools. We don't learn in classrooms. That's a manufactured way that we've been taught to learn. That's not how humans learn. Watch your children, like little babies. How do they learn? They play. Like everything.
Experiment.
Everything. Exactly. They just play with stuff. What I mean by play is when we play, there is no like right or wrong about it. Right? Play is just play. Right? But when you then give yourself this thing where you're supposed to do something right, then there's this problem where you start to hiccup. You're like what happens a lot of times when people go into a gym. They like I luckily for some reason didn't have this problem. People have trouble just doing rolling because they're like, well, like even if they have a basic level of understanding, they'll get to a point where they don't know what to do, and they're afraid to just do something. Just try it. Like who knows how it's going to happen? Just play. And because that's how you learn a lot of times is you just mess around and you move around and you start to get intuition about how your body's supposed to move. And even if you do not, like through your mind, you cannot articulate what's right, what's wrong, your body knows. So for instance, I could tell someone in jiu-jitsu, I could tell them, do not turn your back. I could tell another student, don't turn your back. That they'll learn together, because that person that, even though I never told them to not turn their back, if they're getting choked out left and right, they're going to stop turning their back.
They can figure it out.
Right, they're going to figure it out. And this is what happens a lot of times. It's like there are these principles at work and these ideas in jiu-jitsu that they're at work, the rules essentially, and the ideas and things like that. They're at work that you start to pick up. Now, people can bring them to your attention early. That's good, but you're going to pick them up one way or the other because they're just there. You know what I mean? Like, again, the idea of not turning the back. You're going to learn because you get choked out all the time. Now, we can bring it to your attention. Hey, don't turn your back. But you're going to learn one way or the other because you're going to get tired of getting choked.
Yeah.
And so, but again, you got to be willing to play. So it's like you learn these techniques, and then it comes to play. Have fun with it. Just try stuff out. This is like, it really, I think that's one of the big hindrances people is like, we have this Western thinking intellectual sort of idea where it's like we got to know the answer to everything. It's like just play around, man. Figure it out. Don't be. We don't have to be in this rush to have like A, B, C, D, E, to have it all like lined out for us perfectly. And again, jiu-jitsu is one of those things where it's not going to be lined out for you perfectly. You just gotta try stuff sometimes. You have to be willing to just see what happens.
Yeah, I think the trying thing that I was thinking about, some positions happen by accident. Like I've done the loop choke, and then all of a sudden somebody defends in a way, and then the arm ends up somewhere where I'm like, wait a second, or I end up in a certain way. It's like with your little lapel grip position, that grip break with the lapel, that was kind of an accident thing. I think you're just playing around with stuff.
I was just screwing around. Like I literally was just like there was one day when he's talking about the tentacles. So if you guys got the Get a Grip series, the tentacles in that,
I use that. I still use that.
It's a good grip.
I love it. If I'm ever in that position, I love it. It's excellent because I get it. Honestly, I get it done to me because I like to do the cross collar grip and stuff. I get done to me a lot, and it just makes you rethink. Also makes you, by somebody doing that to you, it makes you rethink your own game. So I start doing different stuff, and I start experimenting based on that. So I think it's like a, just a domino effect.
Right. And the way that move came about was, and by the way, I used it really successfully at a competition to get out of a Bravo grip, which was like,
oh, dude, Bravo grips are the worst.
It was the dude that got the Bravo grip on you and Adam.
Brett,
yeah, dude's got like, he's just got like strong old hands, man. And
dude, when you competed against him, by the way, he was way bigger.
He's got bigger, I think.
Like he's bigger. I think when did we? It's like maybe
2016.
4. Is that when we competed against him?
Yeah, 2016. I think it was like, or 2017. It was early 2017.
Yeah.
It was like February.
What was it?
Because I remember
purple.
It was like no, you guys are brown.
It was brown. It was brown.
Yeah, because it was. I remember it was 2017 because it was right when I started kind of like people started to know who I was.
He played a different game though, by the way.
He did
against you. It was cool. It was interesting.
But he was a tough competitor. But man, he has strong grips, and I had to use that tentacle just to stop the grip from having to fight off chokes. It worked great, and that's what it's good for. It's cross collar grips. But what was funny was the way that move came about, and maybe again this could be instructive to you listening, is basically I had a buddy of mine, Pabone, who just got back. His knee was banged up a little bit, and he wanted to be on the mats, but he didn't want to roll as hard. Right? He couldn't roll as hard. So I said, all right, man, we're just gonna play. So he's trying to like feed in this lapel. He plays like that worm guard stuff, and so I just started taking the lapel and just screwing around with it. And I don't know what I was doing. I was just wrapping it up, and all of a sudden I was like it stopped his lapel game, and I was kind of like giggling. I was like, well, that's something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, huh. So then like I ended up using that move all week long, like just breaking grips and then using it, you know. And then like Adam one day showed a variation of something or some armbar, and that worked off the tentacle, and I started using it to take arm bars. I'm like, oh sweet. So it's like there's all kinds of funky stuff with it. But again, I got it because I was rolling like sub maximal intensity, just screwing around with one of my buddies, you know. And again, this is where there's value in rolling, not 100%. You know, there's value in just like, and again, just playing, just like screwing around. Let's see what happens. You know, again, it's like sometimes like when you read a good book that maybe is on a subject that you're not really interested in or whatever, and you get some really cool information from it you weren't expecting. You know, sometimes doing things a little bit differently, sometimes it has a benefit to it, even if it's not maybe what you think you should be doing right now. Like, oh, I should be rolling really hard. Well, just your buddy wants to roll right here. Just go easy on him. Yeah. And then like just play around and see what happens. And sometimes there's some cool stuff that comes from it.
I think there's a time to. I think that there's obviously a balance to all of it, because there's a balance in. Are you rolling without purpose just to play, but also how much of your rolling is purposeful to get a certain position or submission. So I think there's got to be. You have to have both. You have to have a balance to both of them, and. You know, that's kind of with everything. Like, I think you can't just roll all the time, then some of your techniques may never develop past a certain point. Right. But you know, like, what about like recording yourself? I've done that before, and I feel like I get some benefit from it because I look at some tendencies. Do you think that's a good thing for people to do? Maybe just record themselves training just to see
if they can.
Yeah.
And so so Spartan cuts out the videos and everything else, and he'll put in because we do it for the vault, we do narrator rolls. He'll put in some unedited rolls where I narrate them. And like watching myself roll, you get to kind of see like there's this disconnect a lot of times of what you think you look like and what you actually look like. Like for me, like people probably watch me roll, think I'm moving slow. Like when they see me, I don't move very fast. I feel like I'm burning up. And when I actually watch myself, I'm like, I look kind of slow. But if you were to roll with me, you'd be like, that is not slow. Even me punching, I don't like when I punch, it does not look like I'm punching very fast. But like, it hurts, like, you know, at least that's what people tell me, right?
I don't
like
find out,
right? But I'm just saying, it's like sometimes there's this disconnect of what you feel like, and it reminds me of they used to have those memes. It was like what my mom thinks I do, what my dad thinks I do, what my family thinks I do, what I think I do, and then what I actually do. And it looks like that sometimes. Like I remember there was a video back when I was a white belt. I had this video, so I'll tell you this, guys. This is a story, fun story. So 2004, I was at my second jiu-jitsu tournament. Come out there wearing a singlet. I had just gotten submitted in the semifinals because
you wore a singlet.
No, guy put me in an arm triangle, got me to mount, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I got submitted. Then I'm in the third place in finals, and I go against this guy, and he like keeps running off the mat, So I'm chasing him down. Well, eventually I got behind him, did a duck under, got behind him, had my hands locked around his waist, and he's trying to run out the mat. And I was like, I know he's not getting out of the mat. So I feel him running. I lift him up in the air, and I spin around like twice and suplex him on my back, or suplex him over his back. His legs go over his head. And then I get on top of him and end up like getting my points, getting to mount, and then end up winning the match by points. Now that's what I thought I did in my head. Like that's what it felt like. But what really happened was I got behind him, did a duck under. The duck under was good. Got behind him. I lifted him up maybe 2 inches. And then like what I thought was this big spin was like a half circle. And then he kind of just, I dumped
fell
him.
over.
I dumped him onto his shoulder. It was still a good takedown, but I thought it was a big thing. And there was this disconnect of what I felt versus what I saw. And so one of the things that you can do with video is you can watch what you do. One, you see mistakes.
Yep.
Like I remember watching again, going back to my white belt tournaments, I would watch my matches, and like even they had to be the ones that I won because I didn't like watching my losses. But even on the ones I won, I was getting better so fast back then. Like so, for instance, like from my first tournament to my second tournament, I remember watching my first tournament, like, dude, my feet are all over the place. I'm not connected to the person's body. There's all these problems, and so you get to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so if you have the ability to record yourself, I think it could be useful just to kind of see what your body's doing, get in tune with that, and then being able to, sharpen that up a little bit.
For sure. Like I look at tendencies when I recorded myself, I'm like, well, why am I doing that? Or why am I not doing that? Or why am I just sitting there in this position? Why am I not moving? And so for me, it's really helpful because then I find like, oh, I need to work on this thing, or I need to be doing this. It's sometimes when I'm in the moment, like I can't figure out why maybe a position is not working or a move isn't working. And then if I watch it back, I think for me, I can see the errors. It's a lot easier to like step back and see kind of what you're doing as far as the errors go.
Well, right, because you get to like see. It's like someone competing versus you competing.
Yeah,
you'd be like, grab the arm, and the person's like, I don't think I can grab the arm, right? But you have that bird's eye view. You can actually see what's going on.
Yeah, also you see yourself, and I think it's a little different when it's yourself. I think you kind of just make a. I don't know. It stands out more to me personally when I do it.
Oh yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. Like I said, so like when going back to what I was saying originally, I think I got off track with my story. But Spartan records the videos and he'll post them up so I can narrate them. And when I'm watching them, I like start to like dissect different things I'm doing to make it better, because I'm like, well, this is what I'm looking like. Here's the problems. And, I can look at myself and analyze myself pretty well.
So the one thing about you rolling, if people like it's feeling rolling with you. What it feels like is it's a pace, but it's the same pace. And sometimes you go up a little bit, but there's always like one pace that you keep. You never really dip below a certain pace. So like, hey, all right, it's not terribly fast maybe initially, but when you're 3-4 minutes in and you've been fighting the whole time, like that pace feels really fast.
Yeah, see, that was like me with JT. JT never like kicked the pace up with me. He just kept
consistent.
He kept a pace that I could not keep up forever.
Yeah.
So basically, when we were going, like it was just slowly. I had less and less energy, and then he was still maintaining the same pace. I mean, he was still getting a workout. He was still sweaty.
Sure.
I made him work a little bit, right? But like I just slowly, like it was like he's going a little faster than I was, and I just could not keep up that pace. And so my gas tank ran out before his did. Like he probably had plenty in the tank, and I was on E. After about 30 minutes.
Well, it's kind of like flowing versus really trying, like muscling positions and stuff. If you're just really kind of just flowing,
well,
it's almost like...
Well, it goes back to the intuition, instinct, everything else. When you have so much like driven into the nervous system where it's automatic, it's instinct. You do it so efficiently. It doesn't take much energy, right? Like, so think about like if you think about a baby. Look at a baby take its first steps. It's like thinking about it. It's like trying not to fall, like, flopping all over the place. Like that takes a lot of effort from that kid, mental and physical. Now you can go on a walk and you don't even realize you're walking. You're not thinking about it. It's just happening automatically. So the better you get at jiu-jitsu, a lot of that becomes like walking.
Yeah.
Like where you're literally doing things. And I mean, like, I'm not kidding. Like you guys, if you're listening to this and you're not there yet, trust me, someday you'll be there. You'll be like, yeah, Chewy was talking about this. When you roll with someone and you're at a certain level, I mean, like I can hold a conversation with someone next to me. Like literally, I'm not joking. I've done this. Like
that's like the most. It's like, this is bullshit.
Like I can talk to someone, no problem.
It's terrible.
Right.
I remember my first tournament where I was mounted, and actually it was a guy from Derby City, and I remember he was mounted on top of me, and he's literally looking to the corner, looking at you guys, and just asking questions or getting instruction. And I'm down there like squirming. I was like, this is stupid. I was so angry.
But so much of it goes to that, So then, like, basically, so if you've got a certain percentage more, I don't know how you quantify this, but if you've got certain amounts more that are automatic, you're going to be moving at a faster, more efficient pace with less energy expended. It's basically like shifting into fifth gear versus fourth gear. Right? If I'm in fourth gear, I'm still going pretty fast, right? But now he's in fifth gear. So he's going faster, he's using less energy, less gas, everything else, and he's getting more from himself, right? And so that's just kind of the way it is. It's like if you think about like, the belts, it's like a gear. White belt, it's like first gear. You ain't going anywhere. You're not going very fast, but that engine's a whining, right? Like damn transmissions, like you got to change over. And you're not going anywhere. Second gear, it gets a little faster. You use a little less gas until the point you're like in fifth gear, and boom, you're flying. But your gas is going to be a little bit better. It's going to be more efficient.
Right.
So the amount of distance you travel for the same expenditure is better, right? So that's kind of the idea.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the quote-unquote small game, developing a small game. Like, what should someone, maybe that's a white belt that's learning to develop their game? Now, we had a question on Instagram last week about body types and like how certain positions fit certain body types. That's something to think about. But also, when you're developing your game, like, what do you like to have? Like you want to have a really good, pass, like standing pass, really good, low pass, a couple submissions from bottom. What do you think is like really important to have? Maybe some like prerequisites. You have to have these as kind of a baseline or like the foundation of your game.
I mean, it depends. That's hard to answer like in a short podcast. I mean, like, golly, I could go off on that. That could be like a whole.
Let's do it. So, like, how to develop like your game.
That could be a whole 4-hour product, right?
Sweet.
What I'm saying is with the small game, is whatever that is. There's some fundamentals that you got to have, right? You got to have a guard. You have to be able to stand. You have to be able to pass. Now, whether you stand or do passing low, either way, both is ideal. And you're probably going to have a closer guard, possibly a closed guard, and then an open guard.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to need things like a submission. You'll need to have some submissions from top, right? And you need to have escapes. And I mean, again, you get some basic stuff. If you can do one thing from basically every major position, that's a place to start. The idea of a small game is meaning like you might know a lot. You might know way more than you actually use on a day-to-day basis. But when it push comes to shove, when the shit hits the fan, you have this smaller game that you can rely on. Like, again, going back to like Hodger. He went to the Worlds and choked everybody out with this is some years ago. Went to the Worlds, choked everybody out with an X choke. Bro, an X choke
from guard.
Yeah, and from mount too. Got on top of him.
Yeah, mount. But yeah. Did you from one position mainly?
I can't remember. I can't remember offhand. But it goes he submitted everyone, both in his division and from the open.
That's a white belt choke, by the way.
He's the only guy to ever do that, to submit all of his opponents in the black belt adult division. In open and his division, only guy to ever do it. Right, does it with like basically the same stuff over and over again. He's not surprising anyone with what he's doing, right? But he does it so much better than anybody else can stop, right? And again, you can go and develop all the new stuff, but do you need to? Right? Is it necessary? I think it's necessary to learn stuff because you never know what's going to be useful. But I don't think it's necessary that you need to be great at everything because you're not going to be first off. And I don't think it's necessary that you even need to learn everything, right? Like there's all kinds of weird stuff out there that I have no desire to want to learn, And again, there's an idea that sometimes like you don't want to do what everybody else is doing all the time. So if everybody's like flocking to this move and that move and this move, so what? Like you got work to do on this one. Like I tend to stick on stuff for a while before I move to the next thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So just because it's a new flavor of the week, it's great. But I try to stick to things.
I remember when Bernardo did that seminar, he rolled with everyone and he omoplated.
It was right after he released his like omoplata everyone series.
Yeah, I've used that. That's phenomenal. It's actually good. If you want to develop your omoplatas, you can pick a couple of things that he shows you. There's a couple different setups. And I mean, you're like, what? Like, I can hit it from here. When people stand up, when you're on guard, you can hit it. It's really interesting. Yeah. But like, he did that. And we knew he was rolling. And you watch him roll with everyone. And he's like, he's going for omoplata. I think he told us he was going to do it. Mm-hmm. And he hit most everyone. I know I got hit with an omoplata. I'm pretty sure.
Well, and see, again, that's a great example of like, first off, like one, he's done that move so many times. Got a ton of setups to it, right, for one move. Small. It's just like, but he submitted everybody with it. But also, that's something that could be useful for people too. Is when you guys buy instructional series, an instructional DVD series, where we say DVDs. No one really. I mean, there's very few people that get DVDs, but instructional series. You really should be. I mean, like just as a start, you can always go back to and get more. Get one idea, one thing. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can get one thing from an instructional series, a seminar, whatever, that's pretty good. You can always go back to it and get more. But if you can at least get something from it initially, just one thing.
Yeah.
And then you can always go revisit it again and again and again. Like I think one thing is like, that's what I look for is one thing. I don't want 10 things. I want one thing. What can I do right now to change something? And so I think that's really important.
Yeah. The one thing to work on, like I've seen with white belts, for example, like you'll work on a position, like maybe a guard break or something, right? And then you do live rolling. They totally forget like a very vital. So it's like work on just getting your hands in the proper position before you break the guard. Don't worry about anything else. It's like, and that kind of, that'll open up other things.
Well, and revisit the information.
Yeah.
This is why like we created that membership area for the gym because it's like I want to like have every class that I teach, I want it recorded so this way when they're done, they can go back and watch them.
Yeah.
So this way, when you're done watching me teach you, like you can go back and watch me teach it again, so you can think about, oh, I can remind myself, because like back when I was new, that would have been helpful.
Sure.
Like just like, what was that movie? How did he show that again? Like I can just go back and watch it now. Because I used to watch I would watch jiu-jitsu matches and instructionals and MMA fights with grappling in them like on repeat all the time when I was coming up and just watching it.
Yeah, I think you have to be a little bit more experienced with that, like just to know what you're looking at, so to speak. So I think like if you're a white belt,
I think it's good.
You think so?
I think so.
I think there's two ways to look at it. I think one is like you can get overwhelmed by not seeing some of the details if you're like a beginner. So I think maybe a combination of watching actually instructionals and then seeing it used in a live rolling scenario. I think seeing both of those ways, because sometimes it's not going to be as beautiful, as perfect as.
I watch the same thing. What I'm saying is I watch the same
over
shit
and over,
over
right,
and over
right.
and over
But sometimes I think that people, if they don't know what they're seeing or what they're looking for exactly, you know what you're looking for.
No, I'm talking about back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, I used to get.
You feel it was good benefit?
Oh fuck yeah, it was
cool.
Oops, excuse me, I said F. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, like I literally would watch there was I remember I was trying to get better with kimuras.
Yeah.
Right. I used to watch this series on kimuras that was a part of this DVD. I would just watch it over and over again.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would try it, and I would go to I would watch it all, kind of pick apart the details, go to the gym, try it, come back, watch it again. I would do this over and over again.
Yeah.
I would watch fights, and I would look at the way they set up their kimuras and fights and jiu-jitsu matches, and I'd watch it over and over again, and over and over again. And this is saying repetition is everything. Repetition is everything. It's like if you someone made that quote, repetition is the mother of all learning, or something like that. It really is. It's like it isn't about how much you have. It's about how much do you have that you can actually use. How many times have you done it?
Yeah.
It's not about having a million weapons. It's about having one really sharp one. That's a one sharp sword is better than an army of dull ones, right? Because that actually cuts something. It can actually it has purpose. A bunch of dull weapons are useless.
Sure.
So again, I think that even at a beginning level, because a lot of times in the beginning, you won't be able to articulate maybe all the little details. You're like, oh, what is that? I don't know. But a lot of times, even at an early level, you start to get an intuition and it just kind of feels right. It just happens, right? So if you watch jiu-jitsu, whether it be through matches and through instructional series, and if you watch that stuff repeatedly, that's the key. It's don't just watch it once, just go back through it again and again and again. When you do that, you start to absorb stuff on a different level, right? Even if, for instance, if I listen, like I do this thing where if I find a good audiobook, programs, or sometimes it's related to business programs, and I'm listening to it, I'll listen to them 21 times throughout the course of a month, right? If it's like a couple hours, I can listen to it all day long. I can just whenever
over and over.
Yeah, over and over again, every day. Just
do you feel like you need to be in a certain space, certain mind, you could be doing other stuff while you're listening to it as well?
Well, once I listen to it once, then it's easy, because then it's I'm just reviewing the information.
Gotcha.
When I go, for instance, I walk for usually about 45 minutes a day, between 3 15-minute walks. I usually have a 20, 40-minute drive. So there's over an hour and a half. And then I usually have a little bit of downtime in the morning when I'm cooking breakfast and stuff. And that's usually 20 minutes. So that's about 2 hours.
Gotcha.
So between my walks, my drive, my breakfast, that's about 2 hours. And so I can listen to whatever that is. And usually, and I'm saying if it's a smaller program, it's not, it's different. But I'll listen to it all month long. And just every time I hear something, I'll make the note. But I'll find myself friggin' literally thinking about the stuff, where I'll even find myself speaking like that person or writing like that person. I have to be careful, because it happens, right? Because you're just watching it over and over again. You're absorbing it. And so same thing with movies. You watch stuff. If you watch it over and over again, you can absorb some of that stuff. They've even done studies where they had people where they tested them. There was the study that they did on motor pattern learning, and they took multiple different groups. I think it was 3, may have been more. But basically what they did is they had a particular physical task that they had to perform. They did one group that did all of their repetitions just physically, where basically they were here's how to do it, and they were just doing their whatever, and then they would judge their ability to do it proficiently. There was then one group that had it was a third of it was mental repetitions, where they would see it and practice it in their head, practicing doing the mental movement, and then they did the physical ones, right? And then they did one that was half and half, or 3/4 mental and then 1/4 physical, and they found that there was actually the people that did like 1/3 or whatever it was, they did better than all the other groups as far as their ability to do it more quickly, to do it proficiently more quickly. And it was because, they think the idea is it kind of prime their body to do the physical movement before. So if you're watching that information and then you immediately go to the gym and try it, this is like this is one of the reasons why the video series that I make on my site, I purposely do this, because this is how I learn. I like having like a 5 to 10 minute chunk of information that I can act upon. And so I leave it in there like that. So if someone like goes in there and they're like, okay, cool. They click on it, boom. Like they get this move, a tangible thing that they can try today. Boom, they can go in there and they can try it. They can go to the gym and try it.
Yeah.
And so because then you're getting that feedback from it. And if you watch it or listen to it or whatever it is that you're doing, and then you try to act on it, then again, it's like it primes you to do it, and you get that feedback from trying it. And so again, I think that physically watching it, even if you can articulate it, you're not good at it yet, I think will help you be more proficient at it more quickly. And there is a little bit of testing to back that up, that doing the sort of mental reps, like focusing on it mentally before you can do it physically, can be beneficial. So I think doing it before training like that can be helpful, even if you're not like freaking the wizard of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I remember like my first jiu-jitsu class, I'd watched the UFC so much. Like I'd watched the position, so I kind of knew what guard was. I knew basics. So when I was put in it, I still didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I kind of had a sense of like where I am, like what's the purpose almost. Like I had no idea like how I was positioned properly. I kind of knew. I was like, oh, it wasn't like walking in and like not knowing anything.
You watched
that's going
fighting
on.
stuff.
I watched fighting and I was like, oh, okay, so this is guard, but I didn't know how to do guard, but I kind of knew what it was.
Yeah, you knew mount, you knew guard, you kind of knew the general
I knew
idea.
like an idea, and it was, obviously it's very, very different if you've never done it. But I kind of had like a basic, it's almost like I kind of knew what the game, like I guess I kind of knew how the game was played, maybe.
To me,
I didn't know.
To me, it's like looking at it like you knew the chessboard, you knew the names of the pieces.
Yes.
You knew this is a pawn, you knew this is a rook, you knew this is a knight and queen, but you just didn't know how that pieces moved.
Right.
So now we're like, hey, now we're showing you how these things move.
Yeah.
So this way you can play the game.
Yeah,
but
it's a great analogy.
But you kind of knew what it was.
Yeah, I knew just from watching it. It was just, and when I saw it on TV or whatever, and then I actually did it, it got me so much excitement. I got so excited about it. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is really, really neat. Like, this is what they're doing. So, I don't know. Just for me, I think it helped me learn faster. Definitely for sure. Help me, like, I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of knew what some of the positions, like what you tried to do in those positions too. Like I just knew I couldn't do them, but I kind of had an idea like, oh, well, from here you can, I've seen a bunch of triangle chokes from closed guard or whatever, or arm bars from closed guard. So I kind of knew like a little bit, like you said, I didn't know how the pieces moved, but I know what they were and like maybe how they were positioned on the board.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely 100% like that's right. I mean, and that's good. Like, because I know that for me, I came into jiu-jitsu, I watched fighting, did all this stuff. When I came in, I knew all the names of the positions. I knew what guard was. I wasn't good at it, but I knew what it was. I knew mount. I knew side control. I knew like how to do an ugly armbar. I mean, I watched enough of it till I kind of get an idea, and then it only made it better. So that when I was training and then I was watch fighting, I was like, oh, so that's what he's doing. Like now, I had an understanding about it that I didn't have before. But watching it further strengthened the idea of what I was doing and strengthened the knowledge, because then you got to see it in execution. And for me, I think that like when you see someone doing something that you know how to do, there's some sort of connection you have to that where you're like, oh, like it helps you understand it a little bit better. Even like sometimes like where like I remember years ago, the sweep has become popular again. What's his face? Gordon Ryan did it to
like shoulder clamp or something.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, But basically, a butterfly guard sweep where you usually attack the arm and then you use your forearm under the chin and lift them up. He did it to Buchecha. Right, and then it was like, oh my God, this sweep's crazy. Well, if you want to go watch that sweep again, there's that sweep. I learned it originally from watching Marcelo Garcia, and I think it was Marcelo and Pablo Popovich, right? Because I was a big fan of Pablo Popovich. I used to be under his team, and Marcelo was a monster. I loved watching Marcelo Garcia's matches because I loved his butterfly guard game, and I watched him do it. And I was like watching it over and over again, and then because I had a base knowledge of butterfly, I saw him do it, and I was like, huh, and I immediately tried it and used it like the next week. After I saw it in the match, because again, like you have done enough to where you can connect to it.
Yeah, speaking of Marcel, I as a physical therapist, I always watch people move. like when they walk or stand. So Marcelo's got an interesting thing about his posture. His feet really turn out very far, if you notice. And I think, I'm pretty sure, because I've seen him before, even when he's on the mats in jiu-jitsu, his feet are out, like pointed outward. And that feeds into, him being able to hook under the legs and push off the toes when he's trying to do like a butterfly sweep. Yeah. So to me, I'm like, oh, he's made for that position, just the way his positioning of his legs are.
Well, may have been. Do you think that that happened, or do you think that maybe his body began to, as his hip flexors and his body changed, did they maybe splay out a little bit more?
Could be a little bit of both. Nature versus nurture. How much of it is one versus the other.
Well,
I think I think you see jiu-jitsu guys and girls. You see us in like how our body changes by training jiu-jitsu. Now, again, that's a good thing in some aspects. It's a bad thing in some aspects, because obviously you can have some bad patterns that develop in your body, or some tendencies, injury-wise. But you'll notice, like, my hips have changed. My ability to externally rotate or re-guard or move them in certain ways has changed over the years, 100%. My flexibility and my mobility and like my neck and my posture, because sometimes we have to get up on our shoulders and maybe even on your neck sometimes. If you get stacked, you got to have that range of motion. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think you have to have some prerequisites there. Your body should be able to move. I mean, most people, again, unless you have some kind of, like, because you're born a certain way, maybe your bones or your joints are made a certain way, sometimes people can't develop certain positions. But in a lot of ways, I think you can get to some extent. So I think with Marcelo, I don't know. But I think probably it was a combination of both. That's what I think for most people.
I mean, if you look at, I can spot a grappler by, a lot of times by their body shape, and I can't explain it, but I can look at someone, you can almost tell that they've grappled. You know what I mean? Like, especially versus like bodybuilding.
Sure.
Right. I can tell a guy who just lifts some weights versus
look at the musculature development.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of times the back, like the back development versus everything else. Like a jiu-jitsu guy's back is usually pretty darn significant, like their lats and everything else.
Lats, yeah.
Their lats are very overdeveloped opposed to, say, their legs. Like jiu-jitsu guys typically don't have big legs.
How much do we pull and squeeze in jiu-jitsu?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right?
Exactly.
We squeeze and pull and everything.
Yeah.
So we typically you'll see biceps and lats, but you don't see big legs. You don't see big glutes. You don't see you don't always see big traps. Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Even the chest sometimes not huge.
Yeah.
Whereas you'll have some, but like the back is one of the things I notice. They have big lats.
Big lats. Yeah, it's interesting. Like just the way jiu-jitsu guys, like their bodies develop, but big lats. Yeah, because you're squeezing. Anytime you're doing like a guillotine or anything like that where you're pulling, that's for sure something. There's something I was going to say. I can't think of it now. I forgot. But I don't know. Like jiu-jitsu guys, their positioning, it could depend on your like the type of game you play too.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, because for instance, I don't. Yeah, like for instance, I don't play a lot of inverted guard. I play like almost zero inverted guard because I don't want to risk my neck. I just don't like the exchange. Because I know that injuries are going to come. Throw myself upside down and putting my neck in, it's not one of the ones I want to make a bet.
Well, you might do that if it, like, maybe something big is on the line and you have to maybe re-guard.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, but even then, I probably wouldn't invert just because it's like I'm not good at it. It wouldn't be my bread and butter. But it's
you
not
have to train it.
I've never really trained it enough to really go down that rabbit hole. But again, I play a lot of top position, a lot of wrestling, butterfly guard, half guard. So it's like my body's developed for that. Even my butterfly guard, I know Joe was like. My business partner who he can overhead press like 350 or like with a jerk, but 350 pounds, almost 400 pounds over. It's friggin' ridiculous. But he was so impressed one day where I was doing butterfly guard and I had had my leg lifted, and the guy, like, I'm sweeping a 220-pound man with my right leg lifted, and he's like, he goes, your hip flexors those suckers have to be so strong to do that, because he's like mine would just rip off the bone because they're not ready for it.
That's part of it. Part of it's how to load them up,
Sure.
With your you're using some strength and a lot of skill.
Well, I think this guy was lifted.
Yeah,
he was I was lifting him almost like a leg extension.
Yeah. And just and just working in those positions, those awkward, like, strengthening wise, like, well, should you strengthen in certain planes that simulate jiu-jitsu? Should you not? I mean, that's also, are you building overuse patterns? Are you not?
See, I think about that. Like, I was talking to one of the guys today. I think about if you train too much like the sport, that you're basically just, creating, you're overdoing the patterns and creating pattern overload. And I think it would be just, to me, like, this is what I feel from my experience too. I just try to strengthen my body overall, and then I actually do a lot of stuff that I don't do in jiu-jitsu, specifically so I can fight against it. Like, for instance, like lots of pull aparts where I'm basically stretching out and getting my chest out, like basically like pulling my arms apart, making my chest up, standing up straight, which is the exact opposite of what we do in jiu-jitsu, right? Doing things like that to sort of offset that, and my body seems to like that. You know, doing a lot of hip extension instead of hip flexion, body seems to like that. You
got to be able to get into both. You have to have both aspects for that muscle to work properly. You have to have the muscles that do the work and we call it antagonist muscles, the opposite muscles. They both have to work in unison. If they don't, you're going to get the muscles that are the agonists, the ones that are doing the movement, are going to either start to function improperly. You're going to have issues in other places. So that's a reason why it's important, because you have to have a certain symmetry in the body, right? You're doing it for a few reasons. You're doing it for health, overall health, longevity, which is why you should do it easily. You know, why people do yoga, for example, because it's kind of the opposite side of what jiu-jitsu is. Again, yoga's, some people love it, some people don't, but I think there's benefit to it. But then you're doing these things that are opposite of jiu-jitsu, and you're doing them because it's building kind of that good balance in the body. And I think it's very important for longevity, because then you're not going to, if you have just, say, you talk about pulling, right? We're just pulling. We're doing maybe tightening up our pecs and our biceps and stuff, and that's all we do, then you might start developing back pain. Why? Because those muscles can't do what they're supposed to do and then you're not going to get, if those muscles can't do what they're supposed to do, maybe the shoulder blade muscles, they can't stabilize properly, then you're not going to get as good of a squeeze. So it's all about having, everything working together.
Yeah. It's funny that we were talking about this, and I had a thought about something where, like, again, if you're looking at like when's the right time to try a different technique, I've talked about this idea plenty of times, but like sometimes you need to move when you're getting for sometimes a position might injure you. So I'll share my half guard. One of my favorite sweeps is the giggler, right? It's that little hip shovel under the sweep. But when I use it too much, my left hip flexor gets angry. So like right inside at the hip.
Are you sweeping?
So I'm sweeping to my left.
To the left.
So I'm shooting up underneath of them and coming up, and for whatever reason, it messes that hip up. And so for whatever reason, I just started last night. I had to stretch it out. I know how to stretch it, so there's a particular stretch that seems to work. Got it stretched out. I'm like, all right, no more giggler sweep for at least a week, and I'm going to do some butterfly instead. Yeah. And so again, for people like doing this, I call it rotating the tires. Yep. So sometimes, like, for instance, I got a little shoulder injury. I was rolling with a young wrestler, a two-time college champion, right?
He's a beast, by the way. I've never rolled with him, but he looks just like he would just...
He's a freak, man.
Drive you through the wall.
He will. Well, he drove me into the mat. But I was sweeping him and stuff, but he cranked my shoulder a little bit that I use him for my underhook.
Like the whizzer? Or?
Yeah, with a whizzer, and I had my left shoulder up there and got cranked a little bit, and it kind of caused an injury. So I have not played half guard with my left arm up for since anything. I've been playing with my right arm, and again, because the left arm is just not there, and I don't want to risk it because it's healing now, it's back to normal. Sure. I don't want to risk that, so I'm using my right arm. And so again, you can kind of, sometimes when you have those affected areas, that's a great time to tool in a new position or a new style position or a different side of position, whatever. So this way you kind of get rid of the damage because every position has an effect on the body. The way that we use a particular technique, right? Everything, because everything's using muscle. And again, even if you're being as efficient as possible, muscle is still being used. If I pick up my phone off this table, I'm using muscle. Muscle does everything. This is why I get so it drives me nuts about people stop muscling stuff. I'm like, technique is muscle. It's muscle use.
Yeah. Well, right? How much you use of your muscles. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I mean, some require less.
Yeah.
If your technique is better.
Right, exactly. But you're always using muscle.
But you are.
Right? And so with muscle, so with that said, every time you do a technique, it's developing a particular muscle because you're using it over and over, especially if you're doing it a bunch, right? So this is why you it's even here's a great kind of a weird example, but they found that they did the skeletal remains of knights from the medieval days, and they found that one arm would be significantly bigger than the right one, or than the other one, right? So typically their right arm was bigger because it was swinging, it's holding the land, it's doing all this lifting and stuff, and the left one wasn't doing that much. So they had one arm that was huge. The other one was a little bit smaller, right? So again, think about it the same way. Everything has an effect on the body. Every time you do it, and especially if you're doing it repetitively, it has an effect. So half guard, one of the downfalls of the half guard is you got to be careful and protect your shoulders, because that underhooking and stuff like that, and constantly fighting whizzers and underhooks, it can have an impact on your shoulder. And so sometimes it's good to get away from those positions like that. Just for instance, if I play too much guard, God bless all that squeezing with the legs, man. Like it does not feel good on my hips, since I'll have to stretch it out, open it up and stuff. But again, you can move around in different positions.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that there's definitely a lot to be said about pattern overload, which is something you can develop.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if you want to get better at jiu-jitsu, you just do jiu-jitsu and do some of the supplementary strengthening. But again, there are some reasons where, like, some exercises and things that you may do if you want to build endurance. For example, say you want to build squeezing endurance or guillotine endurance.
Do some isometrics or something.
Yeah, isometrics.
Yeah.
Isometrics are wonderful. Isometrics are really great for a lot of reasons. Waking that muscle up after injury. It's also good for pain relief. There's been some research that's good for pain relief. Just gentle isometrics are good for pain relief. They're good for muscle activation. And then you can actually get it to a point where you're, you know, in a safe way, you're working on your like maximal isometric contractions. And that's a great way to, you know, build endurance. Like say, maybe a triangle choke or something. Maybe you get fatigued holding it if somebody's really hard to finish. Like me and Jeff were rolling it.
Yeah.
And I had him in triangle for a while, and Jeff's so tough and like, you know, fighting, and my legs started getting tired.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I used to not get as tired. So I think that's something I may work on. Is just not necessarily like all the time, but it's something I may incorporate just to build endurance, just for holding position. But I'm not gonna like do similar, like I'm not gonna like, if I'm doing a certain position, I'm not gonna do a weighted thing in that position because that's just, I don't think it's gonna be as beneficial.
Yeah. I think that's just one of those things where.
Sorry, Jeff, by the way. You pass my guard all the time.
Not sorry.
I didn't finish triangle, by the way. I tried.
With a lot of times with the exercises, you know, like for instance, there used to be this functional fitness craze. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Where,
still there to an extent.
I mean, man, it used to be terrible. I remember like when I was about like 20, what was it? 20, probably like 1920, it was big. It was like you'd have like these jackasses like on like Bosu balls doing squats and stuff with bars. You're like, what are they doing? Like what place is this functional? When are you on top of an uneven surface squatting with a barbell on your back, right? Like it's like stabilize your muscles, you know. But I remember it was like, going back to pattern overload, I had the most simple intuitive advice from an old man who kind of laid it out there for me. So I was lifting weights, and my old coach wanted to lift weights. Now my base program that I always kind of go back to is like a 5x5. It's just a good easy program. You can add all the accessory work you want,
right?
You know, but like that five sets of 5 on like the big lifts is just such a good middle ground for strength and for a little bit of power. It's useful, right?
What about, here's a quick question. When you're doing 5x5, and there's be some different theories, and we can ask Joe about it. Are you keeping the same weight? Are you increasing the weight? Are you decreasing the weight as you go? Or you just find one weight that's good, and you're going 5x5 at one specific weight?
I tend to, like first off, it'll be based off, it usually starts off of as a percentage. So basically before I start the program, I'll do a heavy single to get like a working percentage, and then what I'll do is each week I'll have an idea of where I want to hit with that 5x5, and it's just typically it's the same weight across the board for five sets of 5 reps, and then the next week we'll try to increase the weight, a little bit,
but
not
much. that set you're doing the same, and that's kind of what I do as well. I kind of work up, you know, I take some time, I take a few sets to work up to my working weight, and then I go from there.
Yeah. Now, if you're doing like heavy singles and stuff like that's a different thing. You're working up progressively. Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways to change it. I mean, you don't have to do it that way. That's the way that I typically, if I was at this time, especially back then, that's what I would default to. And he was like, "No, man, I want to do this workout that I saw in this magazine." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So it was this martial arts magazine. It was called the Armbar Workout or something. I was like, Armbar Workout. So basically, it had us doing all these weird like positions. Like I remember one of them was like, we were on the cable crossover machine, and it's going to be hard to explain this, but basically, I was laying on my back, and the cable crossover has like, you know, you have basically this cable, and you can move the thing up and down. Well, we moved the little attachment all the way down to the ground. I'm grabbing the handle. I'm laying on my back like a T, right? And on one side, I have this handle. So I'm laying up, facing up to the ceiling. My palm is up. I grab the handle, and then I'm basically pulling as if I was resisting an armbar. And I'm just doing curls like this. And it was all these curls and all this stuff, but it was done from these positions that were very similar to what we would do, right? Yeah. And so this was the workout. It was just a ton of arm work, basically. And which I did not really care for, but I was like, oh, whatever. And I remember like the next day, my freaking arms were hurting. I was like, they like not even a good way. They didn't like feel good pump. It was like they hurt. Yeah. And I was talking to this one of my old mentors named Jim. Jim, he actually owned the gym that I used to go to. Yep. And I come up to him. I was like, hold my arm. He's like, Nicky, is what he used to call me. Nicky, what happened to you? I was like, oh, Jim, I was doing this armbar workout, and I told him what I was doing, and he, and he's like, well, why were you doing all that? And I was like, I told him about the sport that I was doing, where we're doing the same thing. He's like, so you're doing that in your sport, and then you're doing that in the weight room? He's like, yeah. He goes, think you're just doing a little bit too much? And he said it, and I was like, very simple advice, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I've always kind of been against, just from that experience, like, just doing so much of the same thing. Now, there's some things that you can do to support. Like, for instance, I like every now and then I'll throw in Zercher squats, which are very similar to like a front, like grabbing a single leg or something. Yep. But again, you're supporting posture if you do them right. You're supporting a lot of different things, but you are getting something that's applicable to
the biceps are working.
The biceps
you're basically
are working.
setting the bar in your elbow.
Right. So if you're holding something right here in it's going to be very similar. So that it has some application. But generally, I think that if you get a strong, healthy body, because to me, like, weightlifting is supplementary, right?
Sure.
My sport training is what I'm trying to get if I'm worried about that. With strength training is basically to help me be in my sport. And what better way to help me than to, support me with keeping my body healthy.
Yeah.
If I'm healthy, then I can train more. And if I can train more, I get better. So that's how it works, right?
So one thing, like, I think a great thing to work on. So I did that FRC's functional range conditioning is what it's called. And so it's basically joint training. A lot of it's joint training. You're creating more movement in the joint, more range of motion, more controlled movement. But you do a lot of isometrics or end range strengthening. So you think of it this way: if I'm a little bit stronger at my end ranges, maybe my elbow all the way extended, I'm working maybe some isometrics with my elbow extended. I'm gonna have a little bit. Maybe I'll save myself. Maybe I'll have a little more strength there, and somebody's cranking on the arm bar. I can at least protect my arm a little bit. So there is, I think, some purposeful joint training,
Sure.
which I started incorporating since taking this course, and I do it for improving mobility in my hips, and I do it for like even the elbows and the shoulders. Because think of, for example, if you're in an Americana or a Kimura, and somebody's cranking and they're going fast, right? If you can maybe slow that down a little bit, or you can control it just a little bit to stop it from, them tearing your shoulder, So having a little more range of motion can give you a little more kind of room for error, so to speak. And then the other thing is you maybe have a little strength in there, so you can maybe hold it for just maybe that second or that half second that allows you to tap and not get your arm destroyed. So I think strengthening in end ranges, so improving your range of motion, and then improving control, like mobility, which would be kind of like being able to move your arm in that plane, not just passively where somebody moves it for you. You're able to control it, and even have good control and stability and strength at those end ranges is powerful, I think, in protecting, because you're kind of protecting your joints. Not specific jiu-jitsu training, but you're improving range of motion, so you're giving yourself a few lines of defense, so to speak. You're improving a range of motion, so that's allowing your arm to go a little bit further, so it's not going to put stress on those tendons and ligaments or whatever as quickly. And then you can also have a little strength at those end ranges, which will protect that shoulder. If it does go past that limit, you may have a little bit of strength there to at least save yourself a little time. So, but you're right, the pattern overload that we talked about, all that stuff can be a problem. Is there some reason to do it? I'll never say never, but it's not my go-to. It's not most people's go-to. They're better off doing squats, deadlifts, just to build the base and strength, and then you can go off of that.
Yeah, I think there can be time for sport specific type of stuff,
Sure.
like periodically.
Yes.
But not as the foundation of your program.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're just some average Joe that's knocking out 3 days a week in the gym and you want to get a couple days of lifting in, I wouldn't focus on that. Now, if you're a high level athlete who's training year round and you want to spend like, a certain amount of time focus on specific stuff, I think that could be smart.
Yeah.
But just not all the time.
Well, you're doing, what I was talking is more joint specific training. And that, with the research that's been done with that, it kind of shows that you can lay down more tissue, more stuff that can help protect that arm. Okay. But again, with us jiu-jitsu guys, there's certain ranges of motion we may lose, over the time. Like we said, like our body will adapt, to certain, like say somebody sits at a desk all day, they're probably gonna have some tightness in certain areas. There might be a certain rounded position. Your body will adapt. So you want to fight that adaptation too much, because I think if you're too much into one way of being, it causes the muscles not to want to work like they want to.
Right.
In the long term, it's going to affect your longevity, in my opinion.
All right, guys. So that was the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something from that podcast that you can implement into your training, or that maybe motivated you or inspired you to do something related to your training. Again, as always, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can go to patreon.com/jiu-jitsu podcast, and you can subscribe to that, and you can join us in the inside. We're getting ready, at the time of recording this, we're getting ready to release a extra conversation that we did with Dean Lister about competition related, like basically dealing with anxieties as a competitor, which I think is something that people all the time have. And Dean, being someone that competed at the highest level of jiu-jitsu and won at the highest level of jiu-jitsu, I think it's valuable to listen to people like him talk about how they dealt with things. So again, just like we're talking about training ideas, and just like we talked about Bernardo, about the way he trained and how he found out his own way, you take these different experiences from other people and then sort of combine them together with your own experiences and everything else, and you make your own version of your own stew. And so I found the talk useful as far as competitions go, and I think you will as well. So if you want to check that out, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast to check that out. And again, if you want to get some CBD and test run it, I always encourage people to just do a test run, like see what you think. Again, I for a long time thought that CBD was snake oil. I was like, I don't buy it. And then I started using it. Now it's become part of my normal supplementation routine that I use. So again, if you want to check them out, it's been great as far as, for me, just being more relaxed, better sleep, and even it seems to help out with some muscular related aches and pains, like after
soreness,
soreness, like after training and stuff. It really does seem to help with that. So if you want to check it out, I encourage you to just grab a tincture, grab a thing of gummies or whatever you want to. Take it at nighttime before sleep and just see how it works for you. See if you like it. If you like it, great. If you don't, whatever. But if you do decide to take the test, check it out. charleswebb.com, promo code Jiu-Jitsu, 15%. And be on the lookout for me wearing the Urban Legend rash guard, either on probably on Instagram and on one of my future rolling videos. And if you see it and you dig it, you can go to epicrollbjj.com and you can use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu, save 15% on the order. And that's a wrap, guys. So, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Hope you got something from it. And we'll talk to you guys soon. I mean, like next week soon. Like, that's how this works. We're on a 1 week schedule. So we get one new podcast. Usually it's on Mondays. I think it's always on Mondays, right?
It's always on Mondays.
Always on Mondays. So Monday morning, when you wake up.
6:30 a.m. Start your week off right.
That's right. When you're getting ready to go to work on Monday, you have us to listen. You get to listen to us talk about stuff, right? And again, if you're not going to work because you're locked down or something, well, then you can hang out in the house with us, and we'll talk to you too. Because I know some of you guys, like, I had some people, they followed me. They're in California.
Yeah.
And they were like, we just got back to training and then canceled the gym. I was like, shit.
They
locked down everything again.
Yeah.
They locked everything back down again just yesterday. So they were excited.
How long are they open for?
Huh?
How long was it open for?
I don't know, man. I don't pay attention to California.
It's like its own country, its own planet.
It's just different, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with California.
It's just totally unique, like just how populated certain areas are.
I mean, I feel like every state's pretty darn unique. Like the more you go across the country, like that's the thing. Like the idea that we have this thing where we have these states and we have such a large landmass of states. Like
right.
It's something that doesn't exist in many countries.
Yeah.
Like you talk to a European, and like the idea of a road trip is like it's interesting to them. Like I was talking to a guy, like it was a French guy. I was on a canyoning trip in Spain, and this French guy named Jerome, he and I kind of bonded because we were like the best climbers. Like, and I'm not a great climber. I just got strong grip, so I was able to like climb up ropes and stuff. And he was a pretty good climber, so we kind of bonded during this trip. And I remember we were talking. He was like, "Yeah, man, I want to like do a cross country trip and go through Arkansas and Kansas." I'm like, "You've never been there, Jerome. Those places are incredibly boring to drive through. It's like there's nothing through Arkansas, Nebraska, or Kansas. Like nothing. Like
yeah,
you
go like California from like the southern tip to like northern. I mean, it's like totally different climate. It's just
you go from
insane.
Basically being in Mexico to being into this like almost like Oregon, like,
yeah.
So it's like it's just
super.
Very different.
I mean, it's just like the temperature, and also I think elevation levels are kind of different.
Oh, you got different elevations all over the place.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So it's but anyway, so if you guys are not training yet, I hope you guys are doing all right out there. I know it's things are kind of going back and forth with whether or not you can train or whatever. But if you're training, I hope you're able to get some in. If you're not, we'll get through this and things will get past it, and we'll be back to training before you know it. It's like one of those things where it just sucks when you're in it. Like you just want it to be done with. It's like when you get injured. Like there's nothing worse than being like in it because it just drags. But then like once it's gone, it's like a blip.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be like a thing.
Yeah, we gotta take care of each other and be as safe as we can, of course, and stay motivated.
Hey, and
stay hungry.
Hungry. I don't know what you're hungry for.
Well, it's actually, a train, man.
Actually, some
people are gonna be hungry. People are gonna be chomping at the bit.
Listen, some people, if you guys are in the quarantine still and you haven't been working out, you guys don't need to stay hungry. You need to not stay hungry. You need to do some fasting because everybody's coming back with the COVID 30.
Dude, I've put on, but this is good, a good weight. I've put on I've been eating better.
That's good.
I think I put on 7 pounds.
Nice, dude. Very good. Very good.
It's good because I was I literally I lost weight for a tournament that I didn't compete in, and then I had a hard time putting that weight back on.
Yeah, you were getting skinny.
How dare you?
What was
self-conscious about that?
You're self-conscious about being skinny. What was I going to say? There was one more thing I wanted to throw into. Oh, and I say this out there, and again, you guys may go, shut up, Chewy. I've had a couple of my students do this. It's like a challenge to them because this is what I do, right? On the weekends, I almost never get on my phone. I might be on there for a few minutes, but I'm very rarely on it, right, on the weekends. On the week, I do it because it's for business, right?
Sure.
What I would encourage you guys to do is everybody loves intermittent fasting. Everybody's like, oh, it's so cool, intermittent fasting. How about intermittent fasting from social media and from your phone?
Interesting.
I just think I try it. Here's the thing. I've had a couple students do it, and they come up to me and tell me, dude, it was the best weekend I've had in a long time. Because they're not basically being pounded with negative stuff, right? Yeah. They're able to just go about their life. They're with the people that they're with 100% in the moment. They're not messing around with their phone in the middle of conversations. If they're hiking, they're in the hikes instead of let me get a picture of this, just be there. So, and this is not a new thing, by the way. There was a book that I read called it was by a guy named Lin Yutang, and he was talking about Western people and Eastern people, and this is way back in the 30s or whatever. And he was a guy from China that was educated in the West, and he was talking about how the Western people, he's like they can't just be in the moment. They got to take a picture. So just look at the thing that you're looking at and enjoy it.
Yes.
Just be there with it, instead of let me get a picture of it, Anyway, just go back to this.
So when you're fasting, don't post about your fast. Just wait till after.
Yeah, right. So listen.
I'm fasting, guys. I'm 4 hours in.
If you're like a few of my students where they were getting really they would just watch all this negative stuff in line, and then they're angry, they're frustrated, they're getting all this stuff's going on. I just encourage you to take a step away and fast for a day. It's not like the social media won't be there tomorrow. It's not like all this stuff that you're not going to miss anything that's going to change your life immediately right now. Right, you'll be okay for a day, on whatever, And if it's really, 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 really important,
somebody will tell you.
Someone will tell you. If it's we need to get the hell out of the state because something crazy is going on, you'll get a message from someone. I promise you. You'll whatever. But just try taking a little fast from it, so on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever your rest days are. I encourage you, put your phone, you can put it over in a corner somewhere, leave it on so if someone has to call you, they can get a hold of you, emergency or something. But otherwise, just put it away, read a book, go for a walk, go do something with your family or your wife, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Go do something with them, people. Be around those people and just get away from it for a little bit because it's amazing how good you'll feel. This has happened with my students several times where you're just I didn't check my phone today until 8 o'clock at night. And I checked it for a few minutes and that was it. It's it does wonders. So try it out. That's my last encouragement to you. I share that with you just because I see more and more people getting sucked into the big mess that is social media arguments. I just encourage you to maybe take a step away from it. It might be good for you. Might enjoy it, and it's been helpful to a few of my students. So again, I consider you guys as an extension of that. So just sharing it with you, and that's going to be the end of the podcast. So I hope you enjoyed the little rant at the end, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.